All right, welcome in, everybody. It is time for Full Court Press. It's Monday morning, but Rob and I have been with you all weekend, just on the other show with the babysitter, Kelly Stewart. I'm just kidding. It's actually I had a blast doing that show yesterday and with you guys over the weekend. I do want to bring up, though, we haven't been on this show since Friday, and I know Kel likes to get right into the game, so we got to just kind of recap the weekend quick. I'll go first. 3-5 on the weekend for me, Rob. Quite frustrating because it's one of those weekends where, like, a free throw or two in a couple of different games, and I'm probably 5-3. Yesterday, East Tennessee State goes to the line, misses both. Got stuck with a bad number, and LIU was not anticipating a wave of Wagner money 90 minutes before the game. So the bigger takeaway, though, for me here, and I think something like more pertinent than me just coming on and complaining about being on the wrong end of a free throw here or there, is the market and the lines in these games are moving much differently, in my opinion, than they did all season long. It's almost like there's two-way action in every single game. You'll see a move. I'll use Merrimack for an example yesterday. You'll see a move with Merrimack early in the day. That's probably respected money. And then you'll see like big time pushback that, like in that game specifically, pushed it all the way past the opening number. I think that's sort of been the biggest sort of challenge for me is gauging where these numbers are going. Now, you and I have talked about this a ton. It's not going to change. I'm a handicapper. I make all of my own plays. It has nothing to do with like the market and what the market is doing. So I don't really care about the way the lines are moving per se, but you certainly want to get the best number for your bet. And that's something that I'm kind of just trying to figure out going into this week. So talk to me about your weekend as a whole. I know you had a good day Saturday, and if you're experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, we ended up minus 1 unit for the weekend, Adam. What I made Saturday wound up giving back Sunday again, probably due to a couple of unlucky free throws. It's more frustrating at the end of game, and for me when you're playing total and it's a foul situation because a team is scrambling to come back. I speak specifically about Colgate Lehigh over 146. And you get the free throw shooter that you want on the line multiple times, and you walk away in bonus plus situations with only 1 out of 2. And you're an 80% free throw shooter 3 times. You're going to go up there and brick one. Any one of those gets you at least to a push. But like you say, sometimes that works in your favor. The night closed out last night really, really strong. So opening to the day was a little bit sluggish, but last night's close was really strong, including a couple of my favorite plays on the day. And sometimes you play them on instinct, Adam, and what you're seeing, regardless of where the market's pushing them. I didn't understand how Oregon State could be a 3.5-point underdog to San Francisco. Wound up being true. They started out slow, but they finished strong, win the game outright. Idaho, I talked an awful lot about Colton Mitchell being out, the starting point guard, out for that team for like 3 games. He returned a couple of games back and then played last night, and they beat Montana State outright. I happened to play their team total over 69.5, which was pretty easy. But some of my favorite stuff went late at night. And one more that really, again, it shows you how much difference in this game. When we say shop and get the best number, please do. William and Mary Hofstra over 154, get to 153. That game had 83 points at halftime. Hofstra was going crazy. And then, I think if you told me before that game started, Adam, that Hofstra was going to score 92, is the game going to get over 154? I'm going to tell you, yeah, where do I sign up? And Bill and Mary come through. So big summary here. Was almost a wash. Got to watch a lot of basketball for only 1% for 1 unit again since December 1st, which is now so far in the rearview mirror. January, February, March, 4 months later, still the number 2 handicapper at WagerTalk. Winning months ever since then. So everything's been good. But yesterday, a couple that you would like to have go your way.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the instinct portion because that's sort of what got me a win yesterday. I went 1-2 specifically on Sunday, and I just knew Siena was going to win. I was at the game. I was at Boardwalk Hall, um, and I just and that was a great example. The Fairfield money just kept coming in and coming in, and that was where I was like, okay, like this is I just have to punch back at this. Now you're going to basically give me Siena on the money line. I felt like I just that was more of a gut play for me, and it came through. And that may be sort of how I approach these next couple days because again, I ended up I was sitting didn't matter, but I was sitting there with Merrimack -4. That went all the way down to 2.5, and I again some of the line moves have been puzzling, especially that Long Island move from over the weekend with Fuller being fully in there, played the whole game and had a double. So we're gonna get into it today because and here's the segue, Rob. We're gonna start today off with the Sun Belt Championship game. If you don't think the Sun Belt Championship game is a feature game today, I mean, I got news for you, right? Like this is the feature game of the day. I know Gonzaga is playing. I know St. Mary's is playing, whatever. But there's a tournament bid on the line in the Sun Belt. And we have a team that could win 6 games in 6 days. That's Georgia Southern, who did it again last night. Rob, you and I talked about Georgia Southern Marshall with Kelly on Sunday's edition of Full Court Press. I will say I'm not surprised that Georgia Southern won. I think we both made a case for the dog during our breakdown. What I am surprised at is that Georgia Southern won with the game staying under. I'll throw a number at you. 7 for 26 from 3. It's 20 something percent. I didn't think they could win without sort of going nuts from 3. So my question to you is this: is this where 6 games in 6 days finally catches up with them? And even though they won yesterday, did you start to see some fatigue from this crazy run through the Sun Belt Gauntlet?
Yeah, I think you hit on the point, Adam. In fact, I have it written here in my notes that the numbers Georgia Southern posted offensively, the 82 is still 82. No matter how they got there, it's still 82 points. It's the 5th consecutive game in this tourney that they've scored 80 plus. However, like you say, the shooting percentages on both ends came down for this game, 2-point and 3-point. There were a couple of games. I remember talking with you and Kelly yesterday or maybe Saturday. I think I even mentioned Georgia Southern. A couple of games back, they put up 52 shots from the field. 44 were threes, and they made 23 of them. That, I think, was Friday night. They came back and they evened those numbers out. It wasn't such a harsh ratio toward the 3, but they shot it well again. And then yesterday against Marshall, win the game, just don't shoot it as well. One thing I'll just speak to from a please for those watching, and I know a bunch of those who watch us every day, whether live or after the show's done on YouTube. I know a lot of you pay attention to what's going on here, but for those who don't specifically know teams, I think it's so important to know the teams here. Adam, you and I have talked all season long on this show, so hopefully the folks who watch us know. But you hear and read all over the place, oh my God, 4th game in 4 days, they're going to be tired. Oh my God, 5th game in 5 days, they're going to be tired. But you have to know Georgia Southern, and I said it yesterday, it's a team that's built for this. When you have an Alabama assistant, you're built to go 5 games in 5 days. You're conditioned that way. So it's no surprise that Georgia Southern specifically could play 5 consecutive days, not tire, win 5 consecutive games. But in regards to tonight's game, I do take into account what you said because, like I said, it was in my notes. The shooting percentages came down. And the fact that in their only meeting this year against Troy, and this will be Troy's 2nd game, Troy sat around for 8 days before they played a game. And then they played Southern Miss yesterday, a team that had won 4 straight games, and they win. In this specific meeting, first time around, Troy did everything Georgia Southern does well, and they did it better. They played Georgia Southern's game. They outshot them. They crushed them on the boards, which is where this game was decided, but they only won by 5 points, 83-78. Point being, Georgia Southern wasn't able to use their style to their advantage in this particular matchup. So it worries me a little bit here. Shooting percentages came down yesterday. This is a team where you played them at home. They kind of outdid you in the 94-foot wide open court game. The points are kind of interesting here when you look at how many points you're going to get with Georgia Southern. I don't know, Adam, that they'll be thoroughly fatigued. Again, they're conditioned to play this way, but you have to take notes. You look at the number 5.5 pushed all the way up to 6.5 and some sevens. Now people are just going to be like, you know what? Georgia Southern's done. I don't think they're cooked 6 games in 6 days the way they're accustomed to playing, but I do think Troy does have some advantages. Georgia Southern's been very lucky the way this bracket fell, if you ask me, because they've had, I think, 3 opponents where they've played teams that they swept the season series, teams that couldn't compete with them in that particular style of game. This team can. I just don't know that I could lay 7 with Troy. I don't know that this one's going to get out of hand, but I don't think Georgia Southern's going to walk away with the trophy here either. So decision time, which way do I want to roll? Total here, 152.5, hit down to 151.5, some 150.5. There is no way I'd be on under in a zillion years. No way I'd be on under. And I mentioned yesterday, really quick as I close out, every single Sun Belt Conference game for the first 6 days had totaled 157 or better. Yesterday was the first game. I think we had a game. The Marshall game got 160, but what was the earlier game? I'm trying to look at. Yeah, the earlier game, Troy and Southern Miss got 148. That is the only game in this entire tournament, a week-long tournament, that hasn't hit at least 157. There's no way I'd play under. I could look at over here. I'm going to let the market do what they do, though, Adam, and probably push this down even further and then take a better number with the total.
Rob, the fascinating thing about the total is Troy plays slow. Like their tempo is outside the top 300, but you probably don't necessarily want to play slow against a team that might be, battling it a little bit. Like, listen, I don't think the fatigue thing should be moving this number the way it is. Like, go ask anyone in that locker room. They're playing for an NCAA tournament bid. Like, I don't think anyone's in there being like, man, I wish we didn't have a game today. Like, they're probably ready. They're probably just fired up as anything. Where fatigue might come into play is just straight up like legs on the jumper. I do think that 7 for 26 from 3 yesterday is concerning a little bit. Like, Georgia Southern shoots 29 free throws in that game yesterday. If they don't have the benefit of living at the line there, that's maybe that's a different outcome in that game. To give you the pros Troy side of things, Scott Cross really good at making adjustments. That's why Troy has been one of the best teams, or arguably the best team in the Sun Belt all year. So it's a very interesting game because I think Troy playing their game, it's a little bit of a slower pace game. But then again, like, that might not be their game plan tonight, because you obviously want to take advantage of, you don't really want to slow it down for a team that's now on their 6th game in 6 days. So fascinating game. I guess the one final point I'll make from a betting standpoint, I don't think this should be steaming past 7. Like that to me, I think the fatigue and all of that stuff was already pretty baked into the opener. And if you're going to start getting to 7 to 7.5, I mean, this is a conference championship game. To think Georgia Southern's just going to go quietly, I think I wouldn't be dying to lay a bad number here. Let's put it that way. If you like Troy, I'm fine with that. I see merit to the Troy side of the handicap, but I think you'd want that original number, or maybe hope that it comes back to that number and then play it at 7. Or let's say this gets to 7.5. I could only look at the dog.
Really quick, yeah. I hardly ever do this. 100% of the shows that we do, Adam, I'm on YouTube looking at the chat 0 times out of 100. But I happen to be in there today, and I just see this comment from Billy Humphrey. Remind me not to bet late games. I end up staying up late into the night. Listen, I can't tell you, when we lost that hour Saturday, you want to cry the next morning when you have to get up immediately at the crack of dawn. For those of us in this industry that do this work, It was a 5:30 a.m. after I lost the hour the night before, trying to be ready and prepped for the show the next day and get my plays in and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I understand. It's why I'll swear to this day that the East Coast time zone is the worst time zone to be in for this business, but it's what it is. And I know you quote John Rothstein quite a bit. We'll sleep in May. I guess that's what we'll do. We'll sleep in May.
Listen, I mean, yeah. How about when the MAC semifinal you're at tips off at 8:40, and then you feel the need to stay after just to dap up GMAC, and you find yourself talking to a bunch of Siena people, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to drive an hour back to my sister still, and now it's after midnight. But so that's what we're working with here today. But wouldn't want it any other way. Let's put it this way: it was a fun drive. It was a breeze of an hour. If Siena lost that game, it would have been a much longer drive for your boy. So, well, we're going to move on. Garth, first of all, appreciate the donation and shout out to Garth, who's been here every day, contributing his own great stuff. The donations go to a good cause. So we really appreciate that. Wouldn't have needed to donate to hit this game because we were going here anyway, but we very much appreciate that you do. He says 1-1 weekend. Run goes to 15-5, last 20. Yeah, you want to talk about like a documented run. The fact that Garth donates and we put it on the screen every day is like documenting his run. Because that's every one you could look at right here. He says he's going with East Tennessee State, team total over 69.5. East Tennessee State is 15-3 to this number in conference play this season. Put it up 3 times. They didn't they put up 67, 68, 69. So I have a gripe with East Tennessee State. I was on them yesterday, minus the 3. Rob, I don't think by any means they deserve to cover that game. If you watch the game, they were very, very fortunate to even be in position to win the game. Thankfully, Western Carolina went ice cold for the last 8-9 minutes of that game, but East Tennessee State still went to the line with a chance to ice it. They missed them both. Had to dodge a bullet. Last second shot by Western Carolina, no good. They win 69-67. A lot of easy shots missed yesterday for East Tennessee. And then combine that with the fact that they went 8 for 23 from 3. Some of those easy shots were 3-pointers that were great looks. They just missed them. They missed 8 foul shots. That's not very good. 13 for 21, Rob, from the free throw line. So, Garth likes the team total over. I don't know that we've really seen a great ETSU offensive performance yet in this tournament. And, the concerning part for me here, because I want to like the Bucks too. I mean, just from the stubbornness factor. I laid the 3 with them yesterday. They win the game, but they managed to not be able to cover the small number. I've said for months now, it's a bad SoCon this year, but East Tennessee State for me was the best of this, what I consider bad bunch, down year in a conference that's usually much better than this. So I want to take East Tennessee State, but I look at their last 4 games. I look at how the offense has dipped of late. And I have that is what gives me a little bit of concern. But that being said, Garth thinks they're scoring 70 at least tonight. I think if East Tennessee State gets his team total over, they win this game. So talk to me about East Tennessee State Furman. We got another conference trial. We got another tourney bid on the line here in the SoCon.
Yeah, this is interesting, Adam, because when I talked about instinct yesterday, I played Furman on instinct. I watched Bob Ritchie's team down the back stretch after they got healthy. Remember, they played so many games without Asa Thomas, without Cooper Bowser in the lineup. And I was watching one Furman game. I forget who the opponent was, about 6 games ago. And the commentator, it's great watching Southern Conference games because the guys who do the play-by-play and the analysis are tuned in to the Southern directly. They do every game. So you get a little bit of extra stuff that as much as I handicap and as much as I say, I wouldn't really know. Got a feel for Furman. Played them yesterday. They got behind early. They came back and won that game. And I had their team total over 77.5 because I like the way their offense is going with the two guys back for now quite a few games. Lousy first half, really big second half. I too have a gripe with ETSU. Went on the air with you and Kelly yesterday, made this case for ETSU first half, blown out in the first half. I bet the wrong half, right? I should have bet second half because second half was all ETSU. But Furman to me right now is, and I'm speaking only from side right at this moment. Furman's a difficult opponent, I think, for ETSU. 2 games this year. East Tennessee wins both of those games. One was in overtime. The most recent was a little less than a month ago, about 3 weeks ago, 78-69 East Tennessee State. To Garth's point about East Tennessee State, I like the fact that he brings up the number that he does because that's kind of the way I gauge things too. The only thing I'll say to Garth is I did put one more under the total that they're expected to get to tonight because they played the Furman game in overtime, and that game was 61 in regulation. So I kind of count that as an under because they didn't get there in regulation. They did get over this total with the overtime included. I think in this game, the East Tennessee State defense is what the discrepancy in defense, I guess is what I'm trying to say here, is what scares me a little bit about betting Furman. However, I counter that with your point about ETSU. You watched that offense yesterday and you wonder. It wasn't great all season long. They were carried by their defense, and it didn't look great yesterday. So Furman could certainly hang around. I think Furman's just rounding into form at this point in time as a group, Adam. And I kind of trust Bob Ritchie. So I think if I was going to bet side, I'd be on Furman. I haven't played the game. I'm not going to argue Garth off of over 69.5. Again, that's a fairly low number against a not so great Furman defense. Actually, it's been better as of late. It's funny, you have to divide this season into a couple of pieces because they didn't play with some parts for such a long while. And I can't disagree with Garth here on his take, but I do think, I wish I had enough instinct like I had yesterday to pull the trigger on Furman because I think they might pull this thing out.
Yeah, talk about Bob Ritchie. I've always thought he was, he's always in the, if you were to rank out SoCon coaches, I mean, he's been there for a while. He's always going to be near the top of your list coaches in this conference. The thing with Furman, though, that's impressed me, that makes it, it makes me less inclined to play against him is they've cleaned up some of these turnover issues that were plaguing them earlier in the year. This is a team you just pull up the season-long numbers, and, they're outside the top 200, turning the ball over 11.3 times per game. That number was a lot worse going back earlier in the season. They really had a hard time getting into their offense. The guards, I don't think they really had early in the year a true ball handler, and that really hurt them in some of, what wasn't really not an impressive first couple months. They had, you look back now and those losses in the non-conference, High Point, Troy, Northern Iowa, and Illinois State are not bad losses by any means. Those are 4 pretty good teams. But the early loss in conference play to Western Carolina back early January, lost to that loss to the Citadel was probably the low point of their season, losing to the Citadel. But since then, I do feel like they've cleaned it up. And then you talk about East Tennessee State winning the 2 regular season games. That second win for East Tennessee State, it is right around the time that it feels like this team peaked a little bit, and they haven't really been the same since. You look at the last 4 games for ETSU, they lose to Wofford, they lose to Mercer to close out the regular season. And I'd argue that the 2 games in the conference tournament so far, Citadel, they let them back into the game. Yes, they win by 7, but that was certainly not as convincing of a performance as one would expect. And then just a very disappointing effort from them yesterday. So on one side, I say, well, I know they're better than what we saw yesterday. But on the other side, I say, well, okay, they're going to have to now beat Furman 3 times in a season. And yet the team that's shown up here in this conference tournament is probably not as good as the team that beat Furman the first 2 times. And then you're coming in and telling me that Furman is better than they were the first 2 times they played East Tennessee State. So, yeah, I don't really have much to disagree with Garth. I mean, listen, if East Tennessee State cleans it up a little bit, this is a team that shoots the free throw very, very good. They've been, I think, top 50 from the foul line all year. So missing 8 foul shots is kind of uncharacteristic of them. You get some of that cleaned up and a little bit better of a shooting performance. Like I said, 8 for 23 from 3, a little bit uncharacteristic as well. Miss some open shots. The open shots go in, Garth. You're going to get your team total over. But yeah, Rob, I'm with you. I think you can make case for both sides, in this game.
What's interesting is I'd love to use as part of the handicap, East Tennessee had to use so much energy to come back from what was a huge deficit at the end of the first half, Adam. And you'd like to say, man, that was a drain. And you could see the crowd, the team, when they realized they were going to win that game yesterday. It was a huge mountain to climb. They got there. However, you could counter that by saying Furman almost had to climb the same mountain. Furman was buried in the first half and had to make a huge comeback. So you can't even use that type of argument against one or the other. It stands for both. I just happen to think, again, gut feel, Furman's rounding into form at this point in time. And I just, man, I wish I was getting more than 1.5. I'd be there, but I'm not.
And we'll move on in a second. But the final thing I'll say is there is historical precedence for Furman rounding in the form and then winning this tournament, even when they're not supposed to. I feel like they've done it a couple of times where, you go back just like recent history in this league. Samford has, with Bucky McMillan was always like kind of the team at the top. And there's been other years that Greensboro's had really good teams. And you can, there's Chattanooga has had really good teams, has won the regular season in this year. But like when the dust settles, it's been in like, if you go like the last 10 years or so, dust settles and Furman is right there. Of course, the year that comes to mind when they stunned Virginia a couple of years ago in the NCAA tournament, but they always seem to just lurk, right, Rob? And then they come in to this tournament, play their best ball, and leave with the trophy. So, and Bayou finishes it up by saying, let's be honest, ETSU had no business winning yesterday. Western Carolina lost that game more than ETSU won it. I would agree. So, as someone that had an ETSU ticket right there, I think you are. I think you're probably right about that. All right, let's before we move on, quick promo. Rob and I, we've been here all season. We'll be here with you all March. We appreciate you guys showing up, tuning in, interacting with the show. Like, subscribe on Twitter. And the other way to support is, of course, head on over to WagerTalk. We've got packages up for the rest of the season. We've got packages up for 3 days. Tell you what, right now, there's no don't buy the 3-day package on Selection Sunday because, of course, there's no games Monday. But actually, it doesn't matter because WagerTalk will just bump you forward a day that there's no games. The point is, Rob, that was a bad way of trying to make the point that, like, we're going to have games pretty much every day. There's plenty of action, and we're coming up on, championship week, all the big conference tournaments in play. I see you guys asking for the Alabama State 2 p.m. tip-off. The SWAC tournament gets underway. We'll get there. But first, I want to go to Mad Max. Mad Max, appreciate the donation. He says 4-0 in his last 4 picks. I need to get back to form. I need the Garth and the Mad Max form here, Rob. That was my form up until about Wednesday or so. And I've been kind of like battling through a couple of bad days, but love to see you guys cashing tickets. Garth says, I like St. Mary's today. They have a defensive edge in every category. Biggest disparities in rebounding. Last time they played, they had 51 rebounds to Santa Clara's 21. Also 15-0 at home. Well, I remember that game well, Rob. St. Mary's most recent game against Santa Clara. I had St. Mary's in that game. That was a no-sweat blowout winner out in Moraga, California. But Santa Clara was good in the first meeting. So I'll kick it over to you because, you're kind of our resident WCC West Coast guy here. What do you think West Coast Conference semifinals tonight? Believe this is the rubber match between Santa Clara and St. Mary's.
Yeah, boy, as much as I want to love Herb Sendek and Santa Clara, it's hard at this price tag to get there, Adam, for me at least. First of all, Mad Max, and we'll say it one more time here, and when we close out the show at the end of the year, I'll say it again. But the guys in the chat, I mean, the level of knowledge and the level of
Yeah.
handicapper that we
I
have in
don't
this
even need to
chat,
make
Adam.
notes, Rob. I don't even need to
Yeah.
write the stats down. They just tee it
Well,
up for me in the chat.
because in my notes right here in front of me for this game, St. Mary's plus 30 rebounds, 51-21, 21 points off of offensive rebounds. 21 offensive rebounds, 58.3% of possessions or shots rebounded. That was the key to the last game. Mad Max made it for me. It wasn't that way in the first game. And I don't know if Santa Clara caught St. Mary's a little bit by surprise or not, but Santa Clara did win that game. And it was in very atypical Santa Clara fashion, 62-54 in a Santa Clara game, beating St. Mary's at their own turtle style game just shouldn't happen. St. Mary's came back and they won the high scoring game. The second time they scored 86. I really like the St. Mary's team at this point in time. And I like Santa Clara too. I really wish they could get an NCAA bid. I think they're deserving. But when you run up against St. Mary's and Gonzaga in this league at crunch time, the one thing is Santa Clara feasts defensively so much off of forcing turnovers. And St. Mary's is so disciplined. They just don't turn it over enough. If Santa Clara can't get you, they kind of pick up in that full court press right away. They pressure the inbounds pass off of a make, et cetera, et cetera. If they can't get you there, their half court defense is fairly easy to pick apart. They shot the ball really, really well last night against Pacific, a slow-paced team. But that's not St. Mary's. I just don't know that Santa Clara can shoot it the way they shot it last night against this team. And I don't know that the way they play defense is a good enough way to play it against this particular opponent. Again, we say often styles make matchups. Pacific is a team that led the WCC in turnover percentage. They can't handle the ball. I think when I did my notes for that game last night, Santa Clara had turned them over like 21 and 18 times in the first two matchups. Yesterday, Pacific turned it over less than 10. So my point here is that if Santa Clara can't turn you over defensively, St. Mary's is going to get good shots and enough possessions to probably win and cover this game. And if the board work goes in, I'm not expecting plus 30 again, but if they get double-digit plus in rebounding, I don't know, Adam. To me, this game should be priced a little bit higher. I'm with Max. I like St. Mary's in this game. Again, watching Santa Clara all season long, they're probably worthy of a tournament bid. They're as good as a lot of teams that are going to be in there, but this matchup doesn't suit them. So for me, it would be St. Mary's.
I'll play devil's advocate for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing: like you talk about, that's a crazy rebounding disparity in the last game, 49-19. Now St. Mary's is a top 10 rebounding team in the country. So that's, you look at that and then you look at their season long rebounding numbers and you're like, oh, okay, I could see how St. Mary's would crush someone on the glass. They've been top 10 all season rebounding, but Santa Clara is not a bad rebounding team. And I'm going back to that game in my head. And that was the game where part of my reasoning in that game actually was like, ended up being a little bit flawed because, of course, I thought Alan Graves might miss that game. That was the game after he left the game against San Francisco. I thought there was a good chance that he might not play because, of course, it was the same road trip. Sometimes you see that, and it's like if you're on a back-to-back on the road, you leave a game, there's a good chance that guy's not going to play on the same road trip. Maybe comes back the next week, but he played. And not only did Alan Graves play in that game, 20 points, 6 boards, played pretty much the whole game. That really, to me, that St. Mary's win and blowout win, I think had a lot to do with them being at home and them coming out hot, getting, had the threes falling early. I believe they hit 11 in the game. And then just the 20 offensive rebounds. They just demoralized Santa Clara in that game. And in the first half, where it was just like, everything clicked in that game early for St. Mary's. And I feel like they were able to just kind of ride the wave of being in their home gym where they're very tough to beat. They get up. It only was a 6-point game at halftime, but you hit a couple shots early in the second half. I remember thinking maybe right around the 10-minute mark, I was already counting my money pretty much with St. Mary's, and I was laying like 4 or 5 in that game. But they're not in Moraga now, Rob. And I think you take that out, and Santa Clara goes in with the mindset that, like, we've got to be better here on the glass. I could see this game being more like the first meeting. I'm not saying Santa Clara wins, but like, I think I'd be more surprised if this is just a runaway than I would be if Santa Clara maybe hangs around and you end up having, you end up right near the number, or St. Mary's maybe covers by, hitting a few free throws, getting a couple stops late. So that's going to be a good one. I think I lean the dog, but you're right, Rob. They are maybe making you pay a little bit of a tax on that number.
It is crazy too at this season series in particular that each team wins a game that is uncharacteristic. How does Santa Clara win the 62-54 game? And how does St. Mary's win the 86-67 games? It seems like they should have been swapped. St. Mary's, for what it's worth, in the game that they lost, shot miserably. 39% from 2-point range, 18% from 3-point range. Very uncharacteristic of them. Neither team shot it good in that game. We'll see how that one goes. Good tournament out there, Adam. And like I say, Santa Clara, man, I like that team. Just don't like the particular matchup.
All right, let's move it along. Quinn, appreciate the donation. Quinn wants to go to the Horizon. We've been criticized before on the show, Rob, for not talking enough Horizon League basketball. I just laugh at that because someone said it one time, and like I brought it up every single time since that happened. But I think we give the Horizon the same shake we give any of the other leagues. These guys now are off of campus home floors, and they are in Indianapolis, where they'll play the semis. So interesting wrinkle in the Horizon. They used to be a campus site tournament. Now they do campus sites through the quarterfinals, and they head over to one of the small, I think it used to be like Farmers or something. It's one of the smaller venues, I think. I don't think they're at like the big arena. I think it's like a smaller arena in Indianapolis that hosts the semis and the finals. So Robert Morris, of course, Rob, the team that won this last year, a very different team than they had last year, but Andy Toole, fantastic coach, has them right in position to win again. Detroit has been a team I've really liked all year, though. As an underdog, I think it's Mike Montgomery. It's the kid. He used to be at Michigan State. Michigan State players, their coach. His name, I know his last name is Montgomery. It's his first name's escaping me, but reason I bring that up is he's a Detroit guy, and he basically recruited all Detroit kids on this team. It's like almost, he's almost using like the, stay at home and play way to try to like not lose kids, which I thought was like kind of genius if you're like a low major type program that's probably going to lose guys anyway. Just recruit guys from your own city. And it's absolutely worked to this point because Detroit Mercy, man, coming from where they were. I mean, I think it was Mike Davis here previously that had this team at the very bottom of this league. So really good season so far for Detroit. Rob, I've liked them in the underdog role, and they're in the underdog role here. 5.5 points against Robert Morris. So how are you seeing this one? Horizon League semifinals, Detroit, Bobby Moe tonight on ESPN2.
Yeah, I love the way that Quinn brought the old SDQL into the chat here. 12-1 ATS after a game that goes under. Interesting trend by Robert Morris. Noteworthy trend for the Detroit team. 8-2 against the spread down the stretch. They caught fire down the stretch. It continued into the tournament where they won easily against Milwaukee in the opening round. A couple of meetings this season, Adam. Robert Morris wins them both by 8, by 11. The first game is interesting. It's played way back on January 2. And those particular games that were played way earlier this season, when I've been going through these conference tournaments, I've tended to discard them a little bit. Not necessarily interested in what happened on New Year's Eve, what happened the first week of January, because these teams do take a different shape and current form at this time of year. But it is interesting to me that Robert Morris actually beat Detroit 85-77 in that first game without their top 2 point guards. If ever there was a time for Detroit to beat them, it would be without your 2 point guards. However, Robert Morris was good enough to win then. They were good enough to bounce back about 10 days ago, February 25th, and beat Detroit Mercy again by 11. I talked about the 8-2 hot streak against the spread that Detroit's been on. One team that stood in the way was Robert Morris. Beat them by 11. That stuff I can't ignore. A lot of credit to Detroit for what they've done down the stretch, but Robert Morris just seems to be as good at every turn here. Offensively, season-long numbers inside the conference, they're about the same. Defensively, Robert Morris, notably better, second best defensive efficiency team in this league. That could be where the separation is tonight. I think Robert Morris just a little bit better at all facets of the game than Detroit is. Neutral floor. Again, a lot of times it probably favors the dog. Here's the part that bothers me, though. Again, in these conference tournament games, laying 5.5 against a team that's red hot right now, a little bit bothersome. However, the other side of me says, you know what, Rob, 10 days ago, they just beat them by 11. What are you worried about? They just won this game, this same exact game. And Detroit was red hot then 10 days ago, too. So you get a little bit of counter argument there. The third piece of that is Robert Morris was at home. They're not at home here. Can Detroit shave 6 points, 7 points off of that deficit? Maybe. You never know what happens in these games, Adam, once they get going here. These conference tournaments turn out wacky, wild. I think Robert Morris is the better team. Laying up to 5.5, somewhat questionable here. I'm looking at this total of 147.5. 2 games this season, 135. And the earlier game when Robert Morris played without their top 2 point guards, 162. But these teams are a lot different than they were then. My ever so slight lean here is towards Robert Morris. The one thing I'm afraid of is the 5.5 number. You know, you're up 8. Detroit sticks at 3. Case closed. Detroit's a winner.
Yeah, I think so. We have some context here. We have a good comparison, right? We just talked about a game that's in that 5.5 point range with St. Mary's and Santa Clara. And then we've got this one. They're both, on a neutral. We're now trying to evaluate these teams on a neutral. We had home matchups earlier in the season. Like the last game we talked about, I think that number is better than is more accurate than this one in the respect that I almost feel like the books are, kind of they've priced this perfect in my opinion because it's just enough to tempt you to take Detroit. But in reality, this is probably where Detroit is a little bit outclassed. Last game, Rob, the last game where they advanced to get to this point, that was a home game at Callahan Hall. They had the crowd behind them. It was a Milwaukee team that was a little bit banged up. And, that was just a really good spot for them. Probably right there. Like I think that game was lined pretty competitively and it just turned out to be like a great spot, good matchup. Milwaukee, a little bit banged up, one of the better crowds they've had there in a while. Now you go to the neutral floor and you're playing what, has been kind of clearly Wright State and Robert Morris have kind of clearly been the two sort of class of this league so far this year. To me, when I watch these Horizon teams play, like with the exception of Green Bay, who looked like Wright State and Robert Morris at times, like those two have been consistently better basketball teams than the rest of the Horizon, just from the eye test. I was even a little bit disappointed with Oakland this year. So, as much as I like what Detroit has done, and they've been feisty as a dog, I'm kind of with you. Like, I think this might be cheap for Robert Morris. I've got this one closer to 7. But then again, I think they priced it great. Like, let's put it this way. If Robert Morris was like -4 or like 3.5 here, I'd love them in this spot. But you get to 5.5 to 6 and neutral court. I think the books did a good job of pricing this one in that 5.5 range. But I too lean Robert Morris. If you force me to play this one, I would play Robert Morris. But I've been more pro Detroit than most people this year, so I may sit out because of that. But yeah, I kind of with you on your assessment here. All right, we just had that one. Okay. I am. Okay, here we go. All right. We got the super chat window, Rob. Was I was trying to figure out. Oh, okay. I have to unstar the super chat to get rid of it. All right. All right, we're rolling right along. Let's go to the Coastal. And here's what we'll do, because let's hit both Coastal games, because I have a feeling one of these is going to be my parlay leg, and then I'll leave the last like 7 minutes for you to do the parlay. So let's talk Coastal semifinals here. We'll give you a little 2-for-1. Guard says he doesn't have a play in the game, but does Campbell's Cinderella run in the CAA tourney continue tonight? And then, of course, semifinal number 2, Hofstra and Towson. Our top 2 seeds in this league are out. UNCW gets bounced. Charleston gets blown out yesterday, which I was a little surprising to me based on the matchup. So, dealer's choice, Rob. You take whatever one you want, and I'll take the other one.
And I won't take it because I have a play on it yet, but I'll take it because I wondered to myself, was Towson sandbagging us all season long? I mean, all of a sudden, Towson is the team that we kind of thought they would be, or at least the way you've talked about them this season long, the team that you thought they would be in your preseason projections. It never came to fruition, but it's coming to fruition here in the tournament. All of a sudden, Towson, look, they can make shots. And if they can make shots, they're tough to beat. However, Hofstra looked pretty darn good too. Speedy Claxton's bunch, really solid yesterday. This is another game, Adam, where I'm going to use the same exact. Well, I won't use the same exact because I do like Robert Morse, that particular matchup. I don't know that I like Hofstra as much in this stylistic matchup, but I'm afraid of laying 4.5. While I think they're the better team, here's my problem. I don't know if what Towson's doing is the green light buy sign, or if what Towson's doing is a couple of one-offs and Hofstra wins this game. Hofstra's certainly been a little more consistent this season. But again, the 4.5 is the tricky part of this handicap. I mean, do I take the chance that what Towson's doing right now is not as real as it's been, and lay 4.5 and then find out, no, Towson's playing the way they should have played all season long and they win this game outright? Too many questions on both sides for me. I think it's the more interesting game of the two for sure. Simply because I don't know what to make. Towson could win this tournament and wind up in the NCAA in March Madness. And who'd have thunk it as we roll through this season, constantly criticizing, the lack of offense from Towson. Hofstra's been better in almost every aspect of the game, offensively and defensively, than Towson's been this year. So I don't know. To me, Hofstra's the better team, Adam. I'm a little bit scared, cold feet, to go ahead and lay it because I don't know what to make of Towson at this point in time.
All right. So we will get to, we'll do Campbell Monmouth in a second because I do have thoughts there, but I'm going to use Towson plus the points for the parlay. That's going to be my parlay leg. I talked about it yesterday. Hofstra, Hofstra's very jump shot reliant, and William and Mary just fails to expose that. And the thing is, with the way William and Mary plays, like, they're going to give you offense at times. And I actually want to take back what I just said. Hofstra, they're jump shot reliant, but they are great shot makers. Okay. Like that. If you look at this league, you will not find a better shot making team than Hofstra in terms of like the ability to like pull up in people's faces. Cruz Davis is the one that is obviously the first one that comes to mind, where like they're not always taking the best shot, Rob, but like they make a lot of, they'll make a 15, 16 footer that like is maybe not the best shot, but they make them consistently. It's why they've been one of the top teams in this league all year. That being said, they had a 5-game losing streak earlier this year where, some of those tough shots weren't falling. And so they aren't invincible, right? Like they are beatable. And I think that makes them a little bit more beatable. Towson, in my opinion, is better equipped to exploit that than William and Mary because of like Towson's ability. I think they have a little bit more defensive ability than William and Mary. Towson is a fantastic rebounding team. So if you're Hofstra, you're not going to get as many of the like rebound and maybe kick out to a shooter type scenarios, because that's big for Hofstra too. How many points does Hofstra score where they get a board and ping it to a guy that nails the three? It happens constantly with them. Hofstra 36.9% this year from 3-point land. So you're going to get a board and they get a board and a quick kick out. It's pretty much an automatic three for them. Towson, in my opinion, can limit that a little bit. And then you've got the two best players on the floor, or two of the best players on the floor, two of the best players in the conference. The two guys that I thought were going to lead Towson to the winning this league this year, Tyler Tejada, Dylan Williamson. They're veterans, and Rob, they wake up this morning and they just steamrolled Charleston out of the tournament, and there's no UNC Wilmington, and they've got 2 games keeping them from the NCAA tournament. I love everything about the spot for Towson. And then you look up and you're catching 4.5. So that's going to be my leg of the parlay. Still a lot of 4.5s out there. So that's what we're going to play it as. Towson plus 4.5 is going to be my parlay leg. And before we go to yours, I guess real quick for me, Campbell Monmouth's a trickier matchup. I do give a slight edge to Monmouth. I do kind of agree with where the money's going there. I like the way King Rice has his team playing defense. And I just think on a neutral, like for me, Monmouth is the team more likely to end up in the final. I just didn't have as big of a take on that one. That's why I wanted to do the 2 games together. So here's what we'll do, Rob. I'll give you the floor to add any sort of final thoughts on Campbell and Monmouth, and then you take it away. Tell us what your parlay is going to be.
Well, yesterday we discussed on the show with Kelly, UNC Wilmington's just kind of, I don't know what it is, the kryptonite for UNC Wilmington, which was William and Mary and Campbell this year, just could not play these extreme tempo teams. Yeah, they had Campbell played them extremely tough both times regular season, and then come out and win yesterday. And of course, we know William and Mary had 2 great games against North Carolina Wilmington. So somewhat, again, the matchup kind of dictated what happened yesterday for Campbell. Does that happen against Monmouth here? I'm not sure. The problem I would have with Monmouth is I do not trust them offensively. I don't trust them to be consistent offensively. And I don't know that they can control pace enough in this game against Campbell. So there's kind of the thought process for me, which is always the thought process with Campbell, is you look at the total, and if you can't find an edge in the total, you don't play the game at all. To me, in this one, Campbell's got a legit shot at winning, but I never trust their defense. Can they get it into a game where they win based on their offense? Certainly they can. They showed that yesterday against a team in Wilmington that's better than Monmouth is. I would think that this is a pretty good, if you ask Campbell, give him an opponent in the semifinals, I would think Monmouth wouldn't be a bad choice for Campbell. Again, Monmouth just has the tendency to go through those spurts where they don't score. And if they don't score at times, Campbell can certainly rack up points quickly. DJ Smith, it's hard for me to get that performance against William and Mary out of my head. First game this season, he had like 30 points in the first half or whatever it was, crazy. And when you see Campbell at their best, it's hard to not think that they could win this game. They've beaten Monmouth once already this year. Lower scoring game, 68-65. Again, even against the bad Campbell defense, Monmouth didn't shoot well. That's the problem with them. So I would probably look Campbell's way in some way, shape, or form in that one. Haven't gotten there yet. I will comment real quick. I said that in the Georgia Southern Troy game, I would wait around, let the bettors do what they do with the 6 game in 6 days fatigue factor, let them push the total down even further, get a better number. You see 148.5s out there now, 149, 149.5. There was some buyback immediately on some of them. Some venues went back to, some outlets went back to 150. Let me go really quick here. I'm staring at the clock, 6 minutes left to what I'm going to use for the parlay leg. I'll go to the Big Sky. Luck there last night with Idaho. I think I've got a pretty good read on this contest. A team that Idaho got me on just last week was Eastern Washington. Had to play on EWU. The game Colton Mitchell didn't play point guard. And Idaho they made every shot. Eastern Washington did everything wrong. It ruined what was I think a 7-game win streak at the time for EWU. They'd been the hottest team in the league by far. Sometimes that type of loss is good for you heading into the conference tournament. I think in particular, it'll probably be good for them here. They split this season series with Weber State, but where I'm going to go with this game is the Eastern Washington team total up and over 77.5 in this one. Eastern Washington has scored over this number in both meetings against Weber State so far this season. Weber State's not going to do much in the way of limiting possessions in this game. They're a little bit more up-tempo, a little bit more offensive-minded. There's been a lot of movement towards Eastern Washington where the spread is concerned in this game, bet up from 1.5 to a lot of threes out there now. So there's some love affair for them in this game from a side perspective. But for me, team total, just regardless of which way this game goes, and very quick as I look here, Adam, I'll say it again. Shop, shop, shop. 77.5. I'm now seeing a 79.5 out there for a team total. 2-point variance. Get the best of the number. I don't know what we want to choose to use here for the parlay, but full belief in Eastern Washington's offense against this team. They've been great the first 2 times around against them. To see them get to 80 plus here. Again, one of the concerns in these games is your first time or your first tournament game inside the neutral gym. You know, do sight lines bug you? Do the rims bug you, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know that any of that comes into play here with Eastern Washington just because they've been so good at scoring and so good at putting up points during the course of this huge run to end the season. I think they're in a good spot here, Adam. Not going to try the game itself, even though I would lean Eastern Washington, but I do think the safer play here is to just bet them to score over 77.5 points. If you guys out there, in fairness, because there's a high of 79.5 and a low of 77.5, if you want us to use 78.5 for this parlay to be fair to everybody betting out there, we can go that route. If you would rather just pay the price, pay the VIG and go over 77.5, lay the 21 cents, we can do that too.
We'll go 78.5 for the parlay just because I see some people saying, I mean, honestly, you should probably try to get it to 77.5, but I do see some people saying they see 78.5. So I'll put in 78.5 minus 110. And we'll go 2-teamer for the parlay today. I have, I'm not gonna go against you on a Big Sky total, Rob. So I don't need to really add anything to that one. What I will add is this: if you would like to attend the MAC final in Atlantic City tomorrow, I will have a ticket for you. Let me know. It's 9 p.m. I know, Rob, you got something going on. Try to drag you out of the house for that one.
It's right by my territory.
I know it's 9 o'clock. The only rule is you have to root for Siena. Do not show up and root for Merrimack in my face. That is one rule. Would love, obviously, to meet some of you guys. Very easy parking at Boardwalk Hall. Very easy to get in and out of. So, yeah, I'll just throw it out there. Shoot me a message on X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days. But it's, at worst, what a game that's going to be. We got 1 and 2 in that conference. A rematch. Both regular season meetings came right down to the end. So you just have to let me know if you want to go, and I will make that happen for you. To recap today's show, we got the parlay. It's a 2-teamer today. We got to walk before we can run, apparently, on these parlays. So let's see if we can just hit a 2-teamer just to get the juices flowing for this week. Maybe we'll up it to a 3-teamer later in the week. We'll certainly be back to 3-teamers by the time we're back on with Kelly in Vegas this weekend. Today's 2-teamer, I am on Towson plus 4.5. Rob is going to go with the Eastern Washington team total over 78.5 for the parlay. That's your 2-teamer for the day. Bukhari says Towson is 3.5 now. Yeah, I feel like everything we talk about on the show moves as soon as we talk about it, Rob. I'm going to put 4.5 in the parlay, but that one I will attach juice on because, Bukhari, you are looking at one book. There's plenty of 4s. As far as this odd screen, unless it yeah, I mean, okay. No, you're right. It's mostly 3.5. All right, I'll call it 4. But I'll call it 4 minus 120 for the parlay. We'll call it 4 minus 120. The name of the game is just getting you guys info, and hopefully you shop around anyway. So I'm good with that. Towson 4 minus 120. and Eastern Washington team total over 78.5. That is your two-teamer for the show. Rob and I will be back tomorrow morning. Same time, same place. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you guys soon.